How you doing, YouTube? Matt Massive Beer Reviews, back with a little bit of a Treehouse blended stout. Hopeful goodness, in the form of their Spacetime Continuum. Yeah. First things first, this comes courtesy of my boy Steven. Thank you very much, brother. He sent this off with a bunch of other beers. But I'm pumped to try this because it is Treehouse and it's a barrel-aged beer. This might be my first barrel-aged beer I've had from Treehouse, right? Could be. Kinda. Because it's a blend. It's a blend of fresh stout and barrel-aged stout. So we'll get into that. We'll try to read it here. That's the font size. That's the font color. So now you understand why I'm going to butcher this. It says, Spacetime Continuum is an Imperial stout blended with 30% barrel-aged space and time. The threads, and by that I mean the blended part of this beer, of the barrel-aged 18 months, lending a soft vanilla, bourbon, and oak character to a rich and pleasing base beer. Spacetime Continuum pours an oily black in a glass and emits flavors and aromas of dark chocolate, wafer cookies, I think it says, bourbon-soaked vanilla, roasted malts, and dark fruits. As it warms, it reveals increasing layers of complexity and intrigue. 12 ounces. Imperial Stout. Did they put the ABV on this sucker? No. So here we go. So let's see what this has. So you're talking about a blended barrel-aged stout. Like, oh, they're blended. They're cheating you. I'm going to tell you right now, almost all the great stouts you've ever had have been blended. Now, they might be blended with other barrel-aged stouts, but you're talking about a 30 to 70 ratio of barrel to non-barrel. It'd be hard-pressed to find a lot of barrel in this thing. That would be my guess, but it could be wrong. So you're talking about their space and time, and I believe the last time I released that was a year ago, so that's an additional year of those beers in a barrel, you would assume. So it could be a really hefty beer that's being blended. So we'll see what's what. Label-wise, fantastic. It's, black on a little bit lighter black. Fantastic label. Might be the first, nope, I'm lying. It's going to be the first 12-ounce Treehouse beer. That would be the first 12-ounce Treehouse beer that I had. The green in the bottles. And I think that was kind of like a lot of rumors. The people in the know were saying that bottle was a test run for this bottle. I could be wrong. What does that look like? It looks like a big old stout, man. Rich, what I like my coffee to look like, colored head on it. That little bit of ring on the edge that you guys see is pretty much all that's there. Everything beyond that bevels into just straight beer. Looks like an oil slick on top, and just has this dark, thick with 19 C's kind of thickness to it. Just look at those legs on it. Blue blockers, just staining the glass. That head is now grown and puffed up, and it looks this beautiful color of kind of rich, kind of score bar, kind of caramel level stuff. Let's see if we get a nose. I think I'm gonna like this beer. It definitely smells barrel-aged. Let's put it that way. So you're talking about a 30% blend. You're not knowing what's going to show up. It's going to be spirit. It's going to be boozy. It's going to be barrel character. Definitely get a bit of booziness on this. I have no idea the ABV on this. Has to be double digits. Has to be. But you get that soft, typical cherry note that you get on a lot of our barrel-aged beers, but it's got this rich kind of maraschino cherry kind of richness to it that you get from really nice bourbon. There's a definite nice dollop of vanilla you assume is coming from the barrel. And there's a soft little char there. I'm actually quite impressed for 30% blend. By that I mean 30% barrel age, 70% non-barrel age to show this much character. Because there is the barrel present. Is it a 2x4 to the face of spirit, barrel, vanilla, all that kind of stuff? No, but it's definitely there, so that's appreciated. On the other end of things, a bittering, a little bit of burnt, roasty, toasty kind of stoutness. That end of things does not come off sweet, so that blended portion comes off sweet. It has this kind of confectionariness to it, that blending of the vanilla from the barrel in combination with that spirit just makes you think something a little bit sweeter. But the base beer side of things, it's a bit more bittering, a little bit more adulty. Kind of going to be that balance that you expect from hops, that bittering from hops on some of these beautiful IPAs that kind of add as a counterbalance to that sweetness. That's where that kind of bittering and roasty toastiness is going to come off, I believe, from the actual base beer itself. It smells fantastic. Let's dive in. Cheers. You're gonna have to give me a minute. I swallowed that kind of like weirdly, like I almost did like a half swallow and a swallow, so it kind of like burned going down, but it had nothing to do with the beer. It's just the way I actually swallowed the beer, so I don't want to like judge it on that. That's fun. That's a really fun beer. It's sweet. Don't get me wrong. This beer is sweet. But there's a hefty amount of toast and roast and bittering in this beer. I believe that's coming from hops. I believe that's coming from a rich kind of roasty malt. And I believe actually coming from a bit of barrel too. So again, impressed by that only 30% kind of showing up in there. It's confectionery sweet. By that I mean it comes off like soft, like powdery, think powdery, powdered sugar, kind of hot cocoa mix, those kind of things. When I talk about confectionery, that's what I mean when I mean confectionery. A little bit of flaky, kind of milk sugary, powdery donut kind of thing going on. But it's chocolate through and through. You get a nice dollop of vanilla that shows up as coconut too from the barrel, which is very much appreciated. That bourbon is there. It's not overtly hot, but I think the beer is decent ABV to where you get a decent amount of hotness from the beer itself. That cherry's present, but it really a star of the show here, I think, is the base part of the beer. And that it just has a nice, rich bittering to the maltiness, and from the hops also. That is 1,000,000,000% essential for this beer to be fucking tasty, man. I mean, the last thing I want these beers to be are sweet on sweet on sweet. I know a lot of you guys out there love that stuff. By guys, I mean everybody. When I say dudes and guys, I mean guys and girls and everything in between. And yeah, I appreciate the bittering. I appreciate the curmudgeoniness of this beer. Bring a little bit of kind of bittering to a sweet world. Yeah. I think this is fantastic. More importantly, and this is probably the thing I'd probably stress the most about this beer review if you're going to take anything away from this, doesn't taste much like a Treehouse Stout. Now, I gotta kind of define that. I gotta kind of break that down a little bit. For me, a lot of Treehouse Stouts come off very similar. They pretty much all taste like double shot with subtle variants on them. Either lower variants where they don't have, coffee or barreling or anything like that, or any kind of adjuncts. I mean, stuff like that. Or on the other things, they have a ton more adjuncts, but their base core of their stout line comes off very, very similar to me. As does their IPAs. I'm not knocking them. They make both of them epically fantastic, but it's more like, I've said this in previous reviews, their variants in stouts and their variants on hazies are more like the same car with different options. With the way the bittering shows up on this, how the confectionery part of this kind of stands up in combination with the way that barreled portion of the beer kind of comes out. It does have Treehouse DNA, but it doesn't taste nearly as similar as a lot of their other stouts. That's what I'm trying to say. This is fantastic. This is really good stuff. Starting to get, like, as it warms up, as they said in the bottle, take a little sip here and there. Starting to get a lot more cool, mature kind of bits and pieces in the beer. The coffee starts coming out. And when I mean coffee, I mean the coffee that you would normally get from a non-coffee roasted big stout kind of comes through. That bourbon gets a little bit more richer, a little bit more cherry. That marshmallow, or the vanilla turns more into marshmallow. The coconut gets a little bit more coconutty. Those are words. It's just a fantastic beer. You sit here and I sit here and I think about Treehouse and what they do and how they make things. And, there's always the kind of expectation of the beer to be really, really good. You try to go into these beers being as non-biased as humanly possible, but sometimes it's just, you can't do that. We're all humans. So you go into this going, okay, I'm just going to drink this as is and hope it's better than the average. But you can't help yourself. And then You eventually drift back and go, it's Treehouse, and you're expecting a little bit more. When those expectations exceed those preconceived notions, you can't help but be impressed, and I'm impressed. It's a really well done blended barrel-aged beer. I don't think this tastes like 100% barrel-aged beer, but I don't think this tastes like a blended beer. I think that's a very distinct and important talent to have. Blending a beer... How do I put this? So you know the person on Instagram that filters their photos, or Facebook, or whatever fucking social media you follow, that filters their photos to where they're just a little too much, and you're like, okay, this person thinks they actually look like this, but they don't look like this. That's blending. That's barrel-aged blending right there. Because there's a lot of breweries that fuck with shit and blend stuff and mess with things to the point where, like, it's perfect. And you drink it and you're like, yeah, it's not perfect. It's a little bit too much of this or that or the other. And then there's people you have no idea. You have no idea that they filter their photos. They run them through Lightroom. They do all kinds of stuff on them. And they make them look good. You're like, wow, that person takes really good photos, or they're really photogenic. Well, they probably spend a little bit extra time, extra lighting, extra money on their cameras, things like that, to get a little bit better picture. But that doesn't look synthetic. It doesn't look forced. That's where this beer is. This beer comes off, this is really tasty. It's not too far in one direction. And it just comes off really delicious without being called out as being fake or ostentatious. This review's too long. Let's talk about it. It's one of the better barrel-aged beers. I'm going to call it barrel-aged beer because it is. Barrel-aged beers I've had as of late, yes. It's Mount Rushmore status. Let's put it there. I've had a lot of poopy barrel-aged beer as of late, to be perfectly honest with you. This one is not one of them, so let's put it there. Value and availability. Yeah, I assume this is like fucking like expensive and only a certain amount of people got it. And leave you with, if you like what we like this beer, if you like well done barrel-aged beers or barrel-aged blended beers. Again, most of the beers you have are blended, you just don't know it. But yeah, hopefully if you have one of these and you're into those kind of beers, then you're definitely, without a doubt, going to enjoy this beer. So there you go. Another review in the books. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Down there if you want to talk about it. Massive Beers. If you want to check me out doing the social media stuff. Beer Massive. Want to check me out doing the whole podcasting thing. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the review. Hopefully enjoying a little bit of Treehouse right now. Hopefully see you next time. Cheers.